The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 3 must-know motions for meeting success, episode 2, hosted by eScribe alongside Debi Wilcox. For all of you who are brand new to the series, hello, my name is Regine. I am the Events and Marketing Coordinator here at eScribe, and I'm sure you've seen all of our emails coming through to you. If not, you wouldn't be here. So I am the person who's been emailing you all. Nice to meet you. We're just going to start with some housekeeping rules. Debi, if you don't mind going to the next slide for me, please. Wonderful. So, as you all see, you are currently muted. If you do have any questions, we will be answering the questions at the end of the session. So by all means, you'll see that there is a question box on the side of your screen. Feel free to type your questions there, and at the end, I will happily ask Debi your questions, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. If for any reason your questions do not get answered during the session, don't worry, we will be in touch with you answering those questions. And if you have missed the first session or will be jumping out early, don't worry, we will be sending out the presentation and recording of this webinar at the end to the registered email address that you signed up with. But now we'd like to introduce Debi Wilcox. Next slide, please. So Debi is the CEO and founder of Meeting Solutions Group. Debi Wilcox is a professional registered parliamentarian, meeting management expert, and executive leadership coach for women, and the author of Breaking Glass, a leadership kit, The Leadership Kit, a creative personal leadership development planner for women who lead. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Debi Wilcox.
Awesome. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I am super happy to be talking about parliamentary procedure. It's one of those topics that people kind of go, oh, do I have to learn parliamentary procedure? But actually, it's once you learn the basics, this is what this 3-session series is with eScribe, is just putting some foundations in for you. So if you're new to parliamentary procedure, hopefully you learn the foundations. If you are seasoned in parliamentary procedure, hopefully it's just a refresher to kind of remember there's the 3 basic motions. These are what I consider the 3 must-know motions. They're not in Robert's rules as considered the 3 must-know motions. They're the motions that I find are used most in the majority of meetings that I've attended. And, I was in the public sector for 35 years, so handled a lot of meetings. But really, making motions in a meeting does make a lot of people nervous. So let's talk about those 3 must-know motions. And if you ask yourself those questions, does it make you, what are the 3 must-know motions? Am I nervous? This is for you. A special thank you to eScribe to be able to present this to you. It goes hand in hand with their e-agenda system. And the other thing, at the end of the 3rd session, you will actually get a PowerPoint template that I have created especially for you, that you can take back and use in your various meetings for your training programs based on the 3 must-know motions. So let's get started. I know we've only got, I like doing this the 20 minutes. It doesn't overload you, it doesn't overwhelm you. So we can talk about, some basics of parliamentary procedures. Now, there's a number of parliamentary authorities out there. However, this course is based on Robert's Rules of Order. And right now it's at the 12th edition. The National Association of Parliamentarians, they actually have the Robert's Rules in a Surlux bound document. So I encourage that one. It's easier to flip through if you really want those 800 pages. So I like Robert's Rules because it is constantly updated. And it's important that we also understand that parliamentary procedure helps you be confident in your meeting. It helps you have positive decision-making experience. And it really helps a group function. If everybody knows the basics of Robert's Rules, and you have a good chair, I will say you have to have a confident chair, then that makes your meetings be, not so tedious, because we all remember, you can go to 10 meetings, 9 are really great, but you're going to remember that one really bad meeting. So let's learn these 3 must-know motions. So this is the second part, as we talked about. The 3 motions, if you missed the first session, are 3 motions are main motion, amendment, and amend the amendment. So this session, we're talking about the amendment motion. And I'll still explain basically the 3 motions, and you went in the first session, we also covered the steps to make a motion. So let's go over the 3 must-know motions. We'll talk about the amendment. And on the third session, we'll cover the amendment, but I'm also going to go into a little more detail about using the ranking of the motions, using emotion charts, different tools that you can use in your meetings. So the third one will have a little more details for those who are advanced in their parliamentary procedure. So when we talk about the 3 must-know motions, I train and I teach based on a pyramid, because it really helps understanding that you make the motions up the pyramid and you do the voting down the pyramid. And once that concept is understood, everything else seems to click. So at the bottom of the pyramid, which we learned last session, is the main motion. It's the lowest ranking motion. And these motions are what I consider really important to learn. Okay, so if you're training others, or especially if you're with a volunteer board or advisory boards, just teach them the very basics that they need to get through the meeting. Your second motion is the amendment. And so your main motion introduces business. How do you do that? You do that with a mover and a seconder. It could be an item on the agenda, could be a report on the agenda, could be a recommendation on the agenda. Everything starts with what I call the ground pillar of meetings, which is your agenda. So your agenda structure is really important for your meetings. And then the third one is to modify the motion is an amendment, and to modify the amendment is amend the amendment. And this is where I find sometimes there's confusion, that when there is that amend the amendment on the floor, it actually is to amend the amendment, not the main motion at that point. So it can be a little tricky. And I've got some examples further on to help you through that. So let's just highlight what we covered just briefly. What is the main motion? It is the basic form of motion whose introduction brings business before the assembly. Everyone can learn to use motions effectively, but it starts with that main motion. It's the lowest rank. And there's 13 motions in the ranking of motions. Essentially, when motions are made and are pending, motions with a higher rank take precedence over the main motion. So this is the very first motion you're going to make. Okay? And as I mentioned, there's a precedence of motions. A lot of parliamentarians, you'll hear them call it the order of precedence. I call it the pyramid of precedence only because the way I train. So when you're learning parliamentary procedure, or you're imparting your knowledge to anyone, if you're a clerk or a board secretary or a chair, presiding officer, start with these motions. So you start with the 3, what I consider the 3, then we add on 4 to be the 7 building block, and then learn your 13 ranking. But again, we'll go over some processes on the third session, a little more detail. So you have the precedence of motions, but you also have 13 ranking, but then you also have what's called incidental motions. That's such things as, point of order, request for information. And then you'll also have your ranking motions: rescind, reconsider, amend something previous adopted. So you have various categories, but once you learn it, honestly, it does make a lot of sense. So again, motions are arranged in a specific order in which they must be considered and acted upon. So remember, we saw the main motion as on the bottom of the pyramid, and then the amendment. So they're arranged in the rank. So subsidiary motions, which is what your amendment are considered, they are arranged in a specific order. So of those 13, they go up the pyramid. So 13 is the one you would deal with first, and then you move down that pyramid. So we learned in the first session that the main motion is the lowest rank of all motions. And I like, as I said, the pyramid of precedence. Once you learn that pyramid, and you will get a ranking chart at the end of the third session, you'll see the pyramid. And we're going to go over what should be in your motion charts for a meeting. So what I mean by motion chart is you go into your meeting with a chart of all the motions that may be in your procedure bylaw or based on the ranking of Robert's rules. And then in that motions chart, it tells you how it's to be handled. You know, does it need a second? Can it be debated? Can it be amended? What is the vote to pass? Right? Is it a majority vote? Is it a 2/3 vote? So each motion has that precedent of motion and rules associated with it. So when you create a motion chart, you can sit in your meeting and easily glance on, you know, yes, it needs a seconder. Okay, it does need debate. So that's why when you learn those 3 must-know motions, you can start making sense of motions. So let's make some sense of motions. Okay, so your main motion, what does it do? It introduces business to the assembly. It focuses your council or your board or your volunteer committee on one specific item. Okay, so and it starts with, I move that item A on the agenda dealing with ABC, and the chair, of course, you always want to make sure that you get acknowledged by the chair, right? The chair is the presiding officer, and basically they're governing how that meeting goes. So then you have an amendment. So what exactly does an amendment do? An amendment it changes that main motion. You can insert or add words or a paragraph, and we'll demonstrate it I'll show you some examples. You can strike out words or paragraph. You can strike out and insert words or substitute a paragraph. So the amendment can get quite tricky in your motions, in your meetings. And I know I've been in meetings where it's just seemed like a stream of amendments. And then all of a sudden, you know, as the clerk of the meeting, the chair turns for advice, and you have that deer in the headlight look. We all have that. But when you have your motions chart and your understanding, you can just step back, take a deep breath, and answer the question. Okay, so that's main motion and your amendment. Here's what I talk about, and I explained it in the first session, is what I call my pyramid of precedence. So your main motion is the lowest rank. So you see the numbers on the side, 1, 2, 3. You've got your main motion and your amendment, and amend the amendment. What that means is the chair would take the main motion, mover and seconder. The second one would be the amendment. But here's the thing. When the chair does the voting is going to go down. So it's going to start with amend the amendment, and amendment, and then the main motion. Okay, so that's, you vote, you take the recommendations moving up the pyramid, and you do the vote going down the pyramid. It really helps if you're new to parliamentary procedure to understand. So again, it's also got some other titles, and you may hear it's your main motion, but then you'll hear the word subsidiary motion. And a subsidiary motion is assists in treating or disposing of a main motion, which is what an amendment would be, right? So an amendment is a proposal to change a motion, a proposed action being considered by the group, right? It's a motion to modify the wording of a pending motion. An amendment is also considered a primary amendment. So your amend the amendment would be your secondary amendment. You can't go any higher than that. So amendments are discussed and voted on before the main motion in order to make it perfect. It's called the perfecting stage. It's not meant to totally change the motion. It is meant to perfect the motion. So once a motion has been amended, it can be amended again. The only limit to the number of amendments really is the patience of your group. You know, how many can you manage? And amendments may be made at any time during the debate, provided you've moved and seconded. Now, here's the thing. I had a question from last session. Some small boards prefer to have the debate first. Robert's Rules provides that if you're a 12-member or under, it just allows a little more flexibility, if you're following the 6 steps. But some, I find in small boards, you start the discussion first before you do the mover and seconder. There's nothing wrong with that. I think you have to approach Robert's Rules as it's your last resort and manage your meeting with a lot of common sense. But it takes special actions to go back and change something already amended. So members really need to understand what the amendment entails. And that's why it's really important for the presiding officer to understand exactly what amendments are on the floor and what the discussion is about. Because amendments can't totally change that main motion so it doesn't make sense anymore. Amendments, again, they need a seconder. They can be debated, they can be amended, and it usually takes a majority vote. So how do you modify a motion? So when you're talking about amendment, motions can be amended in several different ways. You can add or insert words, you can strike out words, you can strike out and add or insert words, or you can substitute. You can substitute a whole paragraph. Usually when you're adding words, it usually means to place them at the end of the text of the motion. For example, say you have a 4-part recommendation, and part 4 is that a copy of this report be sent to A, B, and C, and you want to amend it to include someone else. That's, adding words. Amendments, again, they have to relate to that main motion, which means the presider decides whether an amendment is germane or not. So the presiding officer is going to say whether that amendment matches the main motion. Of course, if there is a challenge, then the group has a say, but really the presiding officer is kind of key for managing things. So let's talk about the amendments now. Here's an example. If the amendment fails, let's talk about, you've got a main motion on the floor. I move to donate $2,500 to SPDA, and your amendment is to strike out SPDA and insert VCFH. And so you've got your main motion, you've had a mover and seconder on the main motion, you've had a mover and seconder on that amendment. So the chair is then going to take the vote on the amendment. So what happens if the vote is lost, the amendment fails, right? So what happens? The main motion stays the same, right? Because the amendment didn't go through. Now, someone could put another amendment on the floor, again, and just I move to change donate to $3,000 to SPDA. So you can put another amendment. As I said, it's just the patience of the group, how many amendments you can put forward. But if the amendment passes, so you're going to strike out SPDA and insert VCFH, right? The main motion is amended. So it becomes a main motion as amended, and it's I move to donate $2,500 to VCFH. Okay, so that's kind of, if the amendment passes, the main motion changes. So when the chair would take a vote, the chair would say main motion as amended, right? You've taken the vote on the amendment, the chair will then go main motion as amended, provided there's no other motions put on the floor. And then the amendment becomes I move to donate $2,500 to VCFH, and that is what the chair will take the motion on, right? So, okay, let's talk about friendly amendment. First of all, there is actually no such thing as a friendly amendment. It's used extensively in meetings, but there actually is no such thing. It still has to be open to debate and voted on formally. So I'm going to talk to you about some unfortunate customs that happen. The term friendly amendment is often used to describe an amendment offered by, someone for the purpose of the main motion, in the belief that that amendment can improve that motion, presumably to the satisfaction of the group, so that it increases the chances of that main motion going through. But here's the thing. An unfortunate custom has arisen whereby if a person suggests a friendly amendment, quite often the chair will ask the maker of the motion if they accept the amendment. That's actually wrong, because once a motion is on the floor, it's not owned by that mover or seconder anymore. It is actually owned by the group. So once a motion has been made, seconded, and stated by the chair, it belongs to the group. So it's up to the group to accept or reject any proposed amendment. So regardless of whether or not the maker of the motion accepts that amendment, it must be formally voted on. In other words, there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. So if you're chairing a meeting and someone offers a friendly amendment, my suggestion to you is that you state it's going to be handled like any other amendment. And is there a seconder? This kind of sets the tone for your meetings, especially if you're chairing a council meeting. You know, it's good to keep the rules kind of intact for that level of a meeting, a little more informal in your small boards and committees. But there's the thing with amendments. There's no such thing as a friendly amendment. It's used widely, I know that, but hopefully we can start changing that a bit. So let's do our review. Again, we're talking about the main motion, the amendment, and then next session is about the amendment. We just have a quick 15-20 minute session here. Here's the example of the 3 must-know motions. Now, when I talk about, moving, we're going to talk about the amendment, and your main motion being the ranking. They are called what your amendment is. Like I said, they're a subsidiary motion, and the amendment is considered a primary amendment, and the amendment is considered your secondary amendment. Now, you can't go any higher than that. That's your 3 levels. You can't go amend the amendment. And your amend the amendment, which we'll talk about next session, just amends the amendment, not the main motion. I know it can get confusing. And the main motion is your ranking. 13 ranking motions. We're dealing with 3. And next session, we deal with the amendment. So that was a lot of information to cover in like 17.5 minutes there. So if anybody has any questions, and again, you're going to get a PowerPoint at the end of the 3rd session with some notes that you can go out and go training your advisory boards and committees on the 3 must-know motions. We'll talk about your motions chart and having them in your meeting, for ease of reference, so that everybody knows that if you've got a main motion on the floor, is it debatable? Is it amendable? What's the vote? Is an amendment in order? If a tabling motion is put, where's that rank on the 13 ranking motions? Okay, so any questions? I know it's a boring topic, but I like to make it as interesting as I can, and happy to help.
It looks like we do have a question, Debbie. First off, great presentation. I'm sure everyone learned a lot. So just to jump in, if you have any questions, there is a question box at the bottom side. I don't know what side it is on your side, but feel free to type the questions there. I'm going to start with Jesse Clark. They asked, we have provisions in our procedure bylaw for friendly amendments. Is this okay, or would you suggest removing this from our procedure bylaw?
That's a really good question. And here's where I say your common sense prevails over what is black and white rules. If it is making your meetings more efficient and is a custom of your group, then perhaps you can leave it in. There's no harm in leaving it in the meeting. If it's part of your procedure bylaw, it's part of the custom of your group to get your work done, and it works effectively for your organization, then I say leave it in.
Perfect.
Hope that helps.
And Candy asks, so we only received the 3 slide decks at the end of the 3rd? No. So if you were here for the first episode but missed it or just recently registered, let us know, and we are more than happy to send you an email with the past presentations, and you will also receive this one as well later on this week.
Yeah, I think the confusion was what I mentioned was at the end of the third session, you will actually get a separate PowerPoint that is a training PowerPoint that you can utilize and customize for your organization. Maybe that was the confusion. Yeah.
Perfect. Ingrid says, I'm not sure if everyone else is having problems, but audio was off throughout the whole presentation. I heard you just fine. I'm not sure, maybe Ingrid, if it was your settings. We do apologize. Hopefully you can hear me. Nope. Suzanne said, I heard you. People were also saying, so it must just be that one person. So sorry about that, Ingrid, but you will receive the presentation recording, so hopefully you hear it then. The next question comes from Suzanne. They ask, we are a small board. If the motion is created and visible to the members only in the agenda, can discussion take place before making the main motion?
Yes, yes. Robert's rules provides more relaxed rules, and they consider a small board 12 members and under. And I find, even in my experience in dealing with council and committees, the committees quite often did the discussion first before the mover and seconder, and that's perfectly acceptable.
Perfect. So it looks like a lot of the comments coming through are about the audio. They all heard you, so all is great. So sorry, Ingrid.
That's good. I was going to say, I got a brand new mic just for you guys.
Wonderful. So if there are any questions related to today's presentation, or maybe even the first one, if maybe you missed it and rewatched it, by all means, feel free to type it in the question box, and I'm more than happy to read them out to Debi. Thank you, Debi, for putting that the last slide up. So the next session, as we mentioned, this is a 3-parter webinar series. So the next webinar is on September 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you registered for this one and the first one and you're here, that means you will get a reminder about excuse me, about the next session. So look out for that one, and we'll see you all then. And if you are new and want to learn more about eScribe and see eScribe in action, we do have an overview demo coming up on September 14th at 1 p.m. as well, Eastern Standard. It will be in the follow-up emails to you if you are interested in signing up. Did I say 30th? Sorry, I meant September 20th. Can I get, yes, you will get the emails. That's no problem. It looks like everyone just wants the, yes, I apologize. I read it wrong. It's September 20th. You guys are right. My apologies. And you will also receive all the slides. Thank you, everyone. Did I say 30th? I meant 20th.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No
20th of September. 20th of September. If anyone has any other questions for Debi, feel free to type them up. We do have a couple more minutes.
And you're always welcome to email me if you're stuck on a question for your meetings. You're quite happy to email me or email eScribe, and they'll make sure that I get the question to answer. Mm-hmm. And like I say, for the third session, we'll do the amendment, but we're also going to talk a little bit more about using motion charts and what the 13 ranking motions are. So a little more details to get you more comfortable with parliamentary procedure.
Mm-hmm. And give it a couple more minutes. If anyone has any last questions for Debi, reminder to put them in the questions chat. And again, I apologize. The next and final session is on September 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you did not receive the slides from the first one, I'll make sure to include them in the email for this, this webinar series as well. And Suzanne says, thank you, very informative for small boards. That is very informal. That is very informal.
Good. Glad to hear.
Yeah. We'll give it a couple more seconds. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Debi, for this wonderful session. It looks like everyone enjoyed it. Everyone seems to be more engaged today, so that's great.
It's a
Pamela,
lot of information in a short period of time.
yes, Pamela says, thank you, great information. Lisa says, thank you, very informative. So it looks like the questions are done, but the thank yous are coming through. So thank you, yes, Debbie, for a great session. We will see you all on September 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And please look out for an email from all of us here at eScribe.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and have yourselves a wonderful afternoon.